and I've noticed that skating has started to imitate fingerboarding in recent years.
Welcome to the FINGERSPACE podcast. I'm your host, Yosvani, aka Nostalgia FB, and we have the absolute pleasure of chatting with Matt from Joycult in this special two-part podcast episode. We'll be talking to Matt about early fingerboarding history and the beginning of the Joycult brand and how it shaped the fingerboarding community. Then in part 2, we will be discussing the struggles and impact that COVID-19 has had on fingerboarding, and especially with Joycult's situation of severe lockdowns and restrictions. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on your streaming platform of choice. This show is sponsored by FingerSpace Co., which provides fingerboarding gear for all riders of all skill levels. Thanks for coming on the show, Matt.
Hey man, what up?
I know we had a little pre-conversation earlier, but let the podcast people know how you're doing.
Pretty good. Like I said, we were talking about earlier. I'm sure that everybody's feeling the bit of the lag and bummed outness from what's going on in the world. But all kicking it and alive and hecking it, and thankful for that. And yeah, I'm here.
Of course, man. We're here, and that's all that counts.
Hell yeah.
So, Matt, the first question I really want to ask you, given that this is a fingerboarding podcast, how did you get into fingerboarding?
Wow. Well, I've been fingerboarding a really long time, since I was a kid. I don't know if many people know how old I actually am, so let's just keep people guessing. But I was fingerboarding in high school when it was just tech decks around. And I was oblivious for a long time about the actual fingerboarding scene, which was crazy because I was abnormally infatuated with it. In a sense of I skate like hardcore, and I'm not really into like TV and things like that. I never have been. So for me, like, I don't know, just like hands-on things like musical instruments and stuff was always really cool. And when I was growing up, I would always, when it was a rainy day or we couldn't skate, I was always just messing around with like a tech deck or whatever on the edge of a binder or something, or a stapler, and imagining or stuff and building little replica spots that we skated. It's just like a big part of my skate life, I think, more than anything.
That's awesome. Now, were you skating before tech decks came out?
Brand tech deck was like just starting around that time, probably like 1999, 1998. And before that, people were using other boards. Actually, it's crazy when I think now. Like I still have my main quote unquote tech deck that I used from when I was like a kid here. It was like actually a company. I don't know if you've or anyone else has heard of them, but it was called Weird Boards, and it was like a competitor brand to tech deck. It was like they're the same thing. It was just plastic board with plastic trucks and wheels, but they had kind of different shapes and obviously no professional endorsement via like brands. That was what was cool about tech decks at the time, because even back then tech decks were hype. Like let's be realistic, at least for me, because a lot of those pro models that we would use we had, and we thought it was super cool, right? That we had that under our feet, and we were also using it as like a little toy or whatever.
That's dope. If you were kind of, in your words, kind of oblivious to the fingerboarding scene, what was that tech decking culture like? Or was there even a culture behind these little miniature skateboards?
Yeah, there wasn't much of a culture. Like I had a couple of friends who were in my, like at the time, because I had never seen anything or really been online, but like were really, really good. And I would hang out with them all the time. And I actually remember considering myself a closet fingerboarder, because it got to a point where again, like I didn't know that the whole scene even existed, and I would basically, like, I don't know, I was getting a lot older, and the more and more that I was like doing it, people would sort of give like a weird look. Like I wasn't doing it in public or anything when I was at my house, or sometimes I have one in my pocket when I was like more of an adult and stuff like that randomly. I'd carry one at work all the time when I worked at West. I had this like one little room that had these it's like a storage room, and had all these random metal sort of like ledges everywhere, and I would just go there for hours and hours and hours during work, and just like I remember specifically, I was trying to nollie frontside flip to switch crooked grind across this little like ledge gap, and I tried it for like a month, and I got one, and I was like just hyped, yeah. But there was no scene at all. I was definitely like, if anything, embarrassed because look at it this way: if you're just like a grown human being, and you see another grown human being playing with that, and you don't skate and you don't anything, you can't really like distinguish the difference between if they're playing with like GI Joes or Hot Wheel cars or anything. You just think they're basically like a developmentally disabled adult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like, what's up with this guy? Why is this grown man playing with a toy right now? Doesn't he have like, a car and like a girlfriend or anything?
That's definitely one way to put it. But all fingerboarders out there listening, especially grown people, us grown folk, definitely know what you're kind of talking about. And even now, I still feel like there's kind of a stigma of, or there definitely is, of hiding your fingerboard and your toy,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to be judged because grown people aren't supposed to play with toys, supposedly.
Supposedly, different types of toys, I guess, for different types of ages, but a weird period there. And then, yeah, I don't know. I just remember weirdness for a long time. Weirdness and not wanting to tell people that I fingerboarded.
So once you went through your weird phase, when was it that you discovered the actual fingerboarding scene?
Yeah, I always had like it on my kitchen counter at one point. It's kind of cool, actually, the kitchen counter that I'm sitting at right now. And my one friend came in and was like, "Hey, man, like, he's like, I didn't know that you mess around with tech decks or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, dude." I'm like, "This shit's awesome." And he's like, "Have you ever heard of Mike Schneider?" And I was like, "No, who's that?" And he showed me, yeah, he showed me on his phone this video of Mike. It was his fingerboard daily little part from back in the day. I was tripped out on it. I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like, because I've never seen like scale ramps, or anything like that, or even that like wheels with bearings in them. Like at that point, um, it was just crazy. I was always used to using a plastic tech deck that I had actually shaped a little bit myself and tweaked a little bit, but that's like there. I didn't know about even foam grip or anything like that. I just right away thought like, holy shit, and then I literally couldn't believe that existed, like, because that's like something that I had always in my head thought of would be sick, but just never, as a closet fingerboarder, like it's like attack that goal or try to do anything about it. And then from there, actually, that same friend, he suggested that we should film a video. He's like, maybe film a video, like, because he knew that I was like pretty good or whatever. And then we did, and then I put it on Instagram way back in the day when Instagram only had 15-second video clips, actually. That was like new too at the time. That was like brand new.
I remember that. Oh man.
That was like when they just started having video. Even that was like the first Instagram video. It used to be only pictures, and then yeah, I uploaded a little vid there. I met some other fingerboarders through Instagram, and then got encouraged to make more vids, and then learned about like holy shit, I can get a wooden fingerboard somewhere. That's crazy. Yeah, the rest kind of went from there. Really, just kept going on and on.
That's an awesome way to kind of get introduced. It wasn't even like you stumbled upon it yourself online. It was somebody kind of showed you. That's really, really cool.
It's a miracle. I'm so glad that he showed me that. Looking back, I might have probably found out like at some point, like later, I'm sure, because I don't know how much longer my one board tech deck would have lasted.
Man.
But it was getting pretty rickety towards the end, like because I didn't want to change it. I was so used to that. I would just add new parts if I had to.
So how long after that did you get your hands on a quote unquote real fingerboard?
It was really, really fast once I discovered that. Like I just felt like I was eons behind like the times. Like I was like, where have I been? Are you kidding me? Like I felt like I like found like my people, you know what I mean? Like I was like some
Yeah.
some like I don't know animal that gets released into the wild in Africa and like meets up with all these like other sees them for the first time. I don't know, it's crazy feeling. So that was my first, yeah, like one of the first things I did, and it was really really funny because at the time I was like super like insanely like broke, and I remember like spending like pretty much my last bit of money on a Berlin would complete, and like explaining that to like my girlfriend at the time, like wow, we're like so broke. It's like it was so bad, and I just was like, like I don't know, like looking back, like that's probably the like yeah, seeing that from those eyes, because again, she didn't understand, right? Like she just like for all I know, she thinks I'm playing with toys, like. But yeah, no, that was the first one right there. Yeah, like right away, pretty much.
Your first one was a Berlin would complete. Wow.
Yeah, I still have it.
That shows your love, at least for the hobby, the sport, however you want to refer to it as, that you kind of went even into the deep end when you didn't really have the finances for it, but you still did it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't not. Like it was just, I don't know, it was just I was definitely I had to like get one of them for sure.
Looking back on it, was it worth it?
Oh, for 100% for sure. No matter, like, yeah, no, it was worth it. I would have said that like the day after I got it, anyways. Yeah, it was worth it for sure. I remember it was because I remember it was like really weird at first to get used to, and then foam grip too, and I was like, whoa. But I remember just thinking, like, I guess this is better though. Like, so I just kept using it, and then it just sort of became obviously more natural. Because you got to keep in mind, I was using that little plastic for, I knew that thing like the back of my hand, and that's like a weird shape. Now I try to mess with it these days. I actually set up some Joycult wheels on it so they at least roll better, and I still couldn't like figure it out. Like, I was like, damn, I can't believe I used to like actually get busy with this thing. Like that thing's seen a lot of action, that board. Like like days and months of like just not at landing tricks, just trying really hard shit. No.
Man, that's awesome, dude. Especially that you have that board still, and then the first quote unquote real fingerboard that you ever got. What was the transition? What was the catalyst that went from you being a fingerboarder, a writer, into wanting to start up your own fingerboard brand? You know, Joycult.
Good question. Like as I was getting into fingerboarding, and for me, like I had never like seen the scene or community or whatever at the time. It kind of was actually it was a lot different back then too. But from what ads and what stuff you could see on the internet about the fingerboard scene, to me they're just well, it was a couple of things. It's like well, number one, there was just I'm a skateboarder and I'm influenced a lot and pretty much every part of my life in every way by skateboarding, whether it's the music I listen to, I heard in a skate video, or saw it through skateboarding, or a skateboarder recommended it, or it just everything is just in my life so hard. And I noticed that like with fingerboarding, it was like a miniature version of skateboarding, obviously physically, but it wasn't like that anywhere as far as visuals and as far as any brands were really presented, I found, or at least felt. After a while of just sort of, get involved, and then I just, wanted that to be there so bad at one point that I just, just felt like that was a natural step to sort of like to create that in fingerboarding. Because I felt like there might be a lot of people like me who are heavily influenced by skateboarding and maybe, do see fingerboarding kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to use a bad word, but like lame or something. Like maybe as way as I thought that people like my girlfriend or something might see it. So I wanted people that maybe skated to really think like, oh, this is kind of like cool and like trippy or something and like interesting. You know what I mean? As opposed to like sort of, I don't know, this sort of PG-13 type of vibe that I got from most companies, which ain't a bad thing either, because it's an industry made up of kids mostly, right? There aren't a lot of people who are maybe my age or around my age who still fingerboard because life happens and you get away from skating and you get away from that imaginative thing, especially when there's nothing in it. Like, you know what I mean?
I see. That's so. It was kind of you were trying to fill in the gap that you kind of saw missing for yourself, to kind of bridge the quote unquote gimmicky fingerboarding culture to actual skating.
Yeah, I don't want to discredit like the fingerboard scene or culture and say that like it's all gimmicky or anything like that. It's like more like it is like it is what you said too. Like I just seen something that I thought wasn't really there as far as especially just a brand goes. You know what I mean?
Of course. No, I see. Yeah. Looking at it really, fingerboarding is a subculture of skateboarding.
Yeah.
You know, just as much as miniature cars or RC cars is a subculture of, the automotive field or industry.
Yeah.
It's kind of just byproducts that break off, and people fingerboard for all sorts of different reasons,
Yeah, and it's crazy. A little sub point about that is that actually, because I pay attention to skating obviously a lot, and I've noticed that skating has started to imitate fingerboarding in recent years. Like I see skate tricks happen that don't usually happen on a skateboard, but they happen a lot on a fingerboard. I don't know, man. There's something weird going on with that, but I'm not gonna get into that rabbit hole right now.
No, okay, all right. So you have this idea, this want to kind of bridge these two worlds or fill this gap that you see and bring skate culture down to our miniature level. How did you do that? What were the first initial steps in the process to making that happen?
Crazy, actually. I literally woke up on January 1st, I think it was 2014, and I was like working for under a minimum wage at this skate shop, just an under the table job. It was rough times. My girlfriend had just broke up with me, and I walked down to the Business Resource Center in our town here in Brantford, Ontario. And I literally just said, I have this idea. I don't care what you tell me to do it. Just tell me the steps and I'll do it. Just help me, please. And they literally thought I was crazy at first talking about this fingerboard stuff. And then I actually had to go back 3 times. They ended up taking me under their wing and gave me a little bit of a boost in the right direction and as far as planning and actual business and actually connecting me with a lot of smart people. And yeah, that was pretty much the first step.
That's
right
awesome,
there.
especially that you went to, a professional resource to kind of make it happen. A lot of companies usually start up in the basement, in the garage, just tinkering around, but you went, kind of straight up to a professional resource, which is kind of cool, and I've never really heard of that.
I like definitely need like some sort of like help or anything. And that was literally my plea. I was just literally, I can do instructions really well. People just tell me, if I just say, how do I do this? And people give me step by step, then I can do it. And that's what they did. What they did for me. Definitely needed all like the help I could get, like for sure. Before this stuff, like I never owned a computer, a proper digital SLR camera, nothing. Like it was just I had like a Nokia like brick phone
Wow.
and I loved it. It was awesome. Everyone was iPhoning and I was like QWERTY typing. It was T9. That shit was tight.
So I guess needless to say, there must have been a lot of challenges and tribulations and struggles starting up the business and the brand and the company.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, there was for sure. It's just saying. Yeah, there's so many. There's like it was fun though. Like it's not a complaint at all. Like it was the
Yeah.
like biggest thing that I tried to do in my life, and I put everything that I could into it. Until that it succeeded or until it was a real thing because it was super important to me.
What would you say the biggest or the hardest struggle was? Whether it was fiscally, financially, emotionally, mentally, what would it have been?
Oh man, kind of a tough question because like there's all these different little things that you learn and go through along the way. It's hard to sort of almost put your finger on a single one that was like maybe the hardest or something like that. Man, probably though, just like probably just bridging the gap from my old life to like learning everything, you know what I mean? Like very suddenly too. Because at first I actually wanted to make boards, but actually I thought there's already at the time, which is crazy because this is a long time ago, that there was already so many board companies, and I'm like, and it's so like anyone can basically make a board company essentially, and that's not a bad thing. There's people who do it great, and there's people who do it not so great, and that usually people know who those people are, just based on whatever. But I had this like I actually wanted to just put a little bit more effort into it, and then just was like, you know what, I'm gonna go for wheels instead. Like I don't know anything about anything in this. I can't find anything online about it, but let's just learn that. At the time, it really was only flat face, Winkler, and Oak that were really any notable company out there.
That must have been insane because looking at a fingerboard, I make decks myself. I'm one of those people in the vast thousands of us that kind of make their own fingerboards.
Like really quick on that, like it's like that's totally cool. Like I don't know, it is what it is, right? Like it's not in a bad way at all. Like people love it, so people do it. It's a hobby to people, it's a craft to some people, it's a job to some people. And it's everyone's own little like thing. Like no one should hate on anybody for doing that stuff like ever. Like you should feel like, oh, I'm the best, whatever. Like you just do your thing, man. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely agree with that. And it's kind of if you doing it for the right reasons, doing it because you love it, because you just I do it because I like the physical process of making something so small. And that's what I enjoy. Yeah. But kind of getting back to what we were talking about, looking at a deck, I'm looking at a pressed blank right now. It's not that hard fundamentally when you're looking at it. 5 plies of veneer, some glue, you press it in a mold, and then you shape it. And there's 10, 15, 16, 20 different ways that you can shape and drill and finish a board, right? But looking at wheels, there's a meticulous machining process that kind of has to go into it. Whether they're CNC, molded, 3D printed. Well, excuse me. I'm kind of saying all this to be like, you didn't really pick the easy way. You kind of picked one of the elements in the fingerboard that's the hardest to produce, and that must have been a challenge.
It was obviously more of a challenge, and that was sort of intentional because I just thought about it in the long run. You know what I mean? Like, what would be more worthwhile to do, and like right now, and put the little extra effort into now. And the other thing too is that like I had and have a lot of respect for that fingerboard community. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to just be this like, oh, this another company popping up type of deal. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be meaningful and important and actually, and create value in the scene and something that maybe people like needed or wanted. You know what I mean? It just seemed more appropriate to go that route and really work out those kinks to make wheels happen.
Definitely. I mean, definitely when you look at your I don't want to say marketing because it's not really like the marketing that you use, but the culture that you build. I think you've definitely succeeded in doing that and creating something more meaningful for the brand and for the fingerboarding community as a whole. So how did you get started on making wheels? Like, how does one start? Especially how you mentioned earlier, there wasn't really any online resources for you to choose.
Yeah, no. For sure, there's basically two parts that I can just kind of touch on. It's like essentially, number one was obviously how to make it's essentially comes down to like, yeah, the shape and the ingredients. There's the two things to solve, right? So I was really adamant on having a really skate similar feel and experience. So that was a big deal in finding that formula and finding people that could actually make that formula. And then the other thing, yeah, was figuring out the method of achieving that shape with the ingredients, right? Both were kind of equally as challenging because the first kind of OGs That was before we ever had, well, we didn't know shit. Like I just viewed it more or less as like skateboarding, right? Like scaled down skateboarding. So then when we made those at first, it was a bit hard because yeah, there's some differences between actual differences between skate wheels and fingerboard wheels. But you know, those are pretty much the first two big steps in figuring out, and that just involved a lot of calling around and talking to people who are experts in this stuff and applied it in different walks other than skateboarding. You know.
I see. I see. I see. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure it took a while to get all of your R&D down and kind of perfect your formula.
That was a lot. Well, this is the third. It's F3. It's been F3 for a while, and that's the third rendition of like the formula. So yeah, there's been little tweaks that go along and stuff like that, and things we added. The most current one is like it's like a super high rebound. So that formula allows the wheel to not only one be super flat spot resistant, if not proof, but if you smush that wheel or bend it in any way, it'll go right back to its original shape really easily.
Well, that's something that I've never really even thought about, and I've been fingerboarding over 10 years now. And I'll say it, and I've said it before. I'm a plastic wheel type of guy because I grew up with the flat face wheels, and that's kind of what I've always used. I mean, I have a lot of urethane wheels, but that's kind of interesting that you say that because the thing with plastic and harder materials is they crack. They don't once they bend or they deform. They don't go back to their original shape.
Yeah, that's true. That stuff can crack too, but it also takes a lot of on for like even for like a plastic glue or whatever, right? Like that takes a lot of usual force to crack it. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who use plastic wheels, not because they're like they use Joycults around here, but even ones that that do use them, I never heard them. I never heard a plastic wheel cracking that often.
Really? Yeah, I don't know if the people that I've been around are just animals and stepping on their stuff all the time, but yeah, very, very true. Yeah.
Some people get hardcore with that. I got a friend who will like use my fingerboard every now and then when he comes over, and I hate it because he's so like heavy-handed. Like he's pretty good, but like I just like see my finger. I'm just like, dude, can you chill on it? You know what I mean? I feel like he's gonna snap my deck.
Yeah, everybody. If you have a fingerboarding crew around, we all know one person like that. Let them use your second setup instead of your primary.
Oh yeah, gotta have that backup one now. I got that for sure on lockdown in the kitchen. There's just a random complete here. It's like, here, use this.
So once you got your formula down and you were happy with your first initial product, what was your marketing, quote unquote, your marketing strategy to kind of get in and distance yourself from the rest of the crowd to make yourself unique?
Yeah, that part was sort of easiest for me. Um, I had a very clear vision of like what I wanted Joycult to feel like, how I wanted it to be presented, and I just didn't know how to use any tools to convey that message. So once I just learned a few basic things, like you know what I mean, like I got into like got a DSLR and like learned about photography. I have a really good friend who's a pro photographer, Sam Finland. Um, and he taught me a bunch of stuff. And my one friend Derek, he's a really amazing videographer, and I just would pick their brains about everything, and particularly things that I wanted to know that and tools that I wanted to use to convey my message and the feels of Joycult itself there to everybody. But that part was really the easiest part of anything because that was something that I had in my head like before day one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. It's kind of that it came naturally, It wasn't so much you had to work to get an idea of it, it's that you had the idea of it and you had to work to get it out.
Yeah, like Joycall could have been selling anything frankly, we could have made toaster ovens. I don't know. It would have the same vibe.
And I have to say, looking at your Instagram page, you keep your profile locked or privated sometimes, which is something that you never really see a company do. Before we get to that part, it's always been, something ambiguous. I mean, looking at the only post you have right now, it's definitely out of the ordinary, if you would agree.
Yeah, no, I do agree. Yeah, that's how it is.
That's just how it is. That's Joycult. It is what it is. And another interesting thing that I just heard it, and I don't know if it's necessarily true, but that Joycult hasn't really ever used hashtags to grow the page. It's always been word of mouth and just posting and all that.
Yeah, that's true. I cleaned up the Instagram there, but if you looked probably since like maybe 2016, 17, like I just didn't use hashtags and like that's all in a weird way like related to the privacy of the account and stuff like that. It's because like and I'm so happy like am truly like blessed that like people give a shit about Joycult. Early on, it became like really apparent that like not only do I not feel comfortable, sort of like I see all these companies, and I'm not hating on people for doing this. Like I just see them making like lots and lots and lots of fingerboard products, and like that's awesome. But like I've never been able to sort of mentally do that. Like at times when Joycult got busy, and it was just like I don't know, it just starts to more feel like a robotic sort of like routine, and it's not like I don't know, like I don't want to ever be that. Like I want to have meaningful products and meaningful stuff, and have people sort of care and not just feel like oh it's just this shit you can get for super whatever at any damn time or whatever. That was to combat the growth and just to sort of have peace of mind anyways too, because the reality is like it's like good music, man. Like if I don't know if you ever heard like a song or something like that that's like you think is tight, and then you go up to your homie and you're like, dude, have you heard this fucking song? Check this out, it'll blow your mind. And you hit play, and then your homie's like, dude, I heard this song, it's fucking awesome. It's like people will know what good stuff is, and they'll go to it, and you don't even have to like promote it or anything. You don't have to artificially put a hashtag in there or anything, whatever. If people want to see it, they're going to go see it, and they're going to follow it, and they're going to go wherever it is. You know what I mean? You don't need to have anything else. And if you do, it's not, in my opinion, not really worth it. Sometimes I think like for the hashtag thing, it's like, yeah, I want people to see some of the content I make, because to me, it's like art, and like I put that out so that people can appreciate it, and it makes sense that people type in something and be able to search for it, as opposed to just typing it in and not ever seeing any of my content. But I don't know, it kind of is what it is.
Definitely I don't know if I were to describe it, looking on it at it from the outside, it's an organic development, kind of the way I would put it.
I would say exactly the same, man, and that's exactly how I'd want it, right? Like you don't want no like fake like followers or whatever. Who cares about that? You want people who actually give a shit and who are actually following because they're like, yo, like I didn't see this anywhere, and this is awesome.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's like the Joycult fans, the people that enjoy your product, that back it, that write it, definitely are. It's not just for the product, but it's for the brand itself. I don't know. It's a weird and unique thing to have. Not a lot of companies have that, where people will write it just because it's Joycult, because it's Matt's. It's not just because it's a good product. It's a weird connection to describe.
That means a lot, man, like hearing that, because I more or less try to not get caught up in too much of that stuff, because I don't know, more or less, if it's whatever, I don't know, it gives me a little bit of like sort of stress in a way, not stress, like that sounds like a negative word, anxiety. Like I appreciate that people feel that way, And if anything, actually, I guess, you know, that's why I'd want people to resonate with Joycult and vibe with Joycult is because of that branding and that imagery. I don't want to say branding; it makes it sound more too businessy. Like Joycult is really like an extension of me. And me is just skateboarding and my journey in skateboarding and things that are important to me. And anything that I post, whether it's a pic or a video or anything, that's just like, I don't know, I think it's cool that people can like it and it doesn't have to do anything with fingerboarding sometimes. You know what I mean? Like the last post right now, like that's intentional. Like there's nothing to do with fingerboarding in it. You know what I mean? And that's the point. The point is there is no point.
Man, I don't know. I think you might be one of the best creative geniuses that we have on the in the scene. To put it like
I wouldn't go that far, but I appreciate that, man.
I don't know if you're doing it intentionally or not intentionally, but whatever it is, it's working, it's organic, and it's great. I want to touch on something that you mentioned a little bit ago, and it's kind of the stress that comes with the feedback and the comments and all that type of stuff. I mean, I have my Instagram, I have my YouTube channel. At time of recording, it's almost at 1,000 followers, which is great and it's fantastic. But I've noticed when, certain videos or posts get more comments and more views, I reading the comments or paying too much attention to it is kind of a rabbit hole. And a lot of the time it just leads to no good. And I can't imagine what that's like for you having 40 plus thousand followers on your Instagram.
Yeah, man. It's a two-way street. Because it's exactly how you just described. But then also like when you do ignore it, then also people say that you're just like ignorant or something, right?
Yeah, oh, you don't care about your fans, whatever.
The best policy I find is, yeah, or not even about that. Like I do like I do care like in a sense like I'm always like reading like constantly. Yeah, but it's like it's again it's like with that growth thing too, right? I've never been able to afford to like really like make Joycult legit like business where it's like there's a workplace and employees here every day and stuff like that and someone handling this and someone handling that. It's real just sort of hecking it all the time and like it's almost if not it is impossible. It's impossible to sort of keep up with all the conversations. There were times at the beginning when I would be so thorough in contacting people, and at one point it got like it wasn't that it was hard to do. I loved doing it. I loved talking to people, but at one point you're like, I'm talking to so many people that I don't have time to do anything else in the day at all. And these conversations never end because it's on the internet, right? It's not like sort of like when you have a phone call and then you say goodbye. It's like the conversation just sort of always keeps going for days and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. No human can do that. Like, I don't care who you are unless it's your actual, like, devoted job, and I don't know who would have that kind of job to have your own personal conversations for you. So it's hard to find that line between giving yourself to people and also like but not seeming like you're not there completely, you know what I mean? And simply from a standpoint of like that just is what that's just the reality. it I love talking to fingerboarders and hearing the nice things that you're saying about Joycult. Like shocking to me, like amazing. Like I'm flattered that like you or one person even thinks that. But it's hard to keep up with all of it, and I do care and I do love everybody in fingerboarding. You know what I mean? I wish there was a way.
Definitely do know what you mean, and I think that's what a lot of people can kind of lose touch with the fact that you're still a small business and, you know, a 1 or 2 man operation. I mean, you're the one running the Instagram, you know, doing all this stuff, answering the questions, answering the emails, all this stuff. And there's only so much time in a day, you know, and you still have to live life outside of Joycult.
But you know, my life is Joycult. Like, I don't really live, I just skate, and skating is Joycult. And, you know, all this, anytime when there's nothing going on Joycult, I've said this before on stories, like, usually when it's the most quiet is when there's the most absolute most going down, and stuff being developed and things like that, and new ideas happening. Yeah, it really is like entirely in my life, dude. Like 100%.
Say that's commitment, but if it is your life and how you said earlier, it's just an extension of who you are, I guess it's not really that problematic. Like, you're not a person with a quote unquote work addiction. It's just you're living your life doing what you do, and this happens to be a byproduct of that.
Yeah, like, you know, obviously, like, yeah, like, you know, and especially now too, like, you know, making stuff for fingerboarding feels like a natural thing. You know what I mean? It feels like that's where I am, that's where I belong, and that's what I'm doing. And yeah, there's a comfort level to that is good.
All right, so let's take a quick break.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Fingerspace podcast. Thanks for skating by, and don't forget to nosebonk that subscribe button and dark slide on over to our Discord server. This episode was produced by Fingerspace Co. and hosted by Nostalgia FB. Big thanks to all guests and listeners.